One of my favourite parts of the classic Sonic games, and one that I feel is quite underrated, is their approach to mapping the journey you undergo. The specifics change between each entry, sure, but at least one incarnation of every game between Sonic 1 and Sonic 3 would give you a glimpse at the wider region you were running through, whether that be the maps of South Island or Little Planet from Sonic 1 and Sonic CD, or the glimpses at the wider West Side and Angel Islands of Sonic 2 and 3. With the exception of the first game, none of these would tell you exactly where every zone was, but using the few recognisable landmarks and a little bit of guesswork, you'd be able to put together a pretty good recreation of how you travelled across the region. Angel Island was of course the culmination of Sonic Team's growing mastery of this, and I've seen multiple videos and social media threads mapping the game using it. But the concept would wither away by the Adventure era to only really reappear in the Sonic games explicitly about globe-trotting exploits. With SRB2 being entirely based on the classic era of the Sonic franchise though, and with it taking the heaviest inspiration from the design philosophy of Sonic 3, you may have expected it to attempt its own version of this phenomena. You may have then been disappointed by how the game would end, seemingly never having even attempted to do something like this despite multiple opportunities to do so. But what if I was to tell you that that was not entirely true? In fact, what if I was to tell you that not only does such a map exist, but that it was right in front of you every single time that you would open the game? Admittedly, it is a little hard to see with everything else going on, but look past the animated logo, look past the random mountains and distorted water effect, and pay attention to the skybox as it rotates around the camera. Note this large island, and note how there seems to be very intentional landmarks, including different biomes and even a few buildings. It is a little difficult to make everything out with all of the stuff going on in front of it, and a little bit of the island is actually unseen because of the showcase gameplay canon. So let's exit the game and extract the title screen skybox to make things a bit clearer. That's better, isn't it? From this new viewpoint, we can see pretty definitively that this is a very intentional callback to Sonic 3's Angel Island sprite. Over the two islands, we can see a few landmarks that are obvious representations of some of the zones, whether that be the pyramids of Sandopolis on Angel Island, or the facilities of Techno Hill here in SRB2. But between those landmarks, we have lots of empty space where we need to use a little imagination to place the remaining zones. With that in mind, let's figure out how our journey to release the Black Comet takes us across these isles. Immediately, we can use landmarks to place Techno Hill, Arid Canyon, and Red Volcano. These buildings represent the towers of Techno Hill, these Badlands represent Arid Canyon, and this large mountain with a crater is almost certainly Red Volcano. Even better, now that we've pinpointed these three zones across the isles, we can use our knowledge of the stage order and a little bit of imagination to make educated guesses for every other stage in the campaign. Egg Rock and Black Core take place in Eggman's new space station, so they understandably aren't represented on this map. It's a space station orbiting the planet. We can just put an arrow pointing up at the sky and say they take place somewhere up there. However, we know that Deep Sea is located somewhere between Techno Hill, which is found on this island, and Arid Canyon, which is found on this island. So I reckon that if we were to drain the water between the two, we'd find Deep Sea nestled somewhere around here. Greenflower occurs around Greenflower Mountain and before Techno Hill, so seeing as we've established already that the player is travelling eastwards across the islands, I'm going to say that this mountain and the forest around it represent the first zone of the game. That's a Sleet Castle Eggman, and with no pine forest or fortifications to earmark it, we have to rely on the pattern we've established and find somewhere between deep sea and arid canyon. I'm going to put it at the base of this mountain. The zone is a little mountainous, and maybe the darker green of the mountain compared to the surrounding forests is due to the large number of pine trees. I also like how this placement separates the zones that appear before and after the Castle Eggman difficulty spike. They literally occur on two distinct islands, and maybe the increased difficulty can be blamed on the eastern island being more dangerous somehow. Sadly, like Angel Island before it, this map has its limitations. Both island sprites only really allow for the mapping of the campaign missions, and whether it's Sonic 3's multiplayer stages or SRB2's bonus stages, there's quite a few areas we can't pinpoint on the map. Forest Fortress could be placed around Castle Eggman, and AZURE Temple could be anywhere below the waterline. I'd personally assume it's an even deeper part of the Deep Sea Temple complex. Beyond those though, there's nothing that could be considered Frozen Hillside or Pumpkin Heights as two obvious examples. But even so, I think this is really cool, and I'm amazed that I've seen no one mention anything about this over the years. I don't know whether that's because no one stared at the title screen for long enough to notice it, or because I like maps a little too much and felt the need to talk about a topic uninteresting to most others, but hopefully you learned something new about SRB2 today. I reckon 2 more questions remain. Firstly, will this map be updated in the future to contain Dark City and Grand... No, I'm sorry. Even if the map is updated, that'll be so far in the future that none of us will be there to see it. The more pressing question is, what do we actually call these islands? As far as I can tell, no confirmation has ever been given to the location SRB2 takes place. We don't know whether this is Sonic Team Jr.'s interpretation of an existing island like South Island, or a new location entirely. If it is a new region of Sonic's plant, I reckon we need to come together as a community and decide on a name for this place. Give your suggestions in the comments, and hopefully we can come to a consensus. Choose a name to make official. I'm personally leaning towards the Greenflower Islands, but that is the result of about 20 seconds of thought on the matter, so I'm sure someone else can think of a better name. Anyways, there's my bit of obscure SRB2 knowledge shared amongst you all. When you've been playing a game as long and often as I've been playing this, it's inevitable that you eventually run into something you don't see talked about that often. If this was something that interested you, I've got another video coming out soon that will showcase some other cool things in SRB2 that I don't see people talk about often, so keep an eye out for that. For now though, I hope you two enjoyed today's video, and ciao.